When testing the programs we've written so far, we had to build and run the programs each time with different input values. It is not hard when we only have a few test cases, but what happens when we want to test 100 values, or maybe even 1,000? Or better yet, maybe we don't even know how many times the program needs to run. Fortunately, we have several ways to repeat a block of code. Java has 3 types of loops: a do-while, which is a post-test loop, a while loop, which is a pre-test loop, and a for loop, which is also a pre-test loop. Each loop has a specific purpose. The do-while loop executes the block of code at least once, since it doesn't check the status of the condition until after executing the code in the loop. A while loop repeats as long as a conditional statement is true, and a for loop executes a predetermined number of times. Let's review the syntax for each of the loops included here. I already have a program open called loops, and I've created 3 loops. Each loop does exactly the same thing. The first loop is an example of a do-while loop. You'll note I started out by printing out a message that tells us this is the results of the do-while loop. I declared a count variable as an integer, and I assign it the value of 0. Here's the do-while syntax, starting on line 19. Do is a keyword, so it changed to blue. We indicate the block of code to be executed inside the curly brackets. So do, open curly bracket, system.out.println, hello world. Count plus plus. Close curly bracket. So those 2 statements in lines 20 and 21 will execute while the count variable is less than 3. So the do, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, while statement are all one loop. Let's go down to the while loop. In this case, I still have a system.out.println just so we can distinguish the output from the different loops. I reset the count variable back to 0. On line 27, we start the syntax for a while loop. While, parentheses, the variable count is less than 3. Open curly bracket. Same 2 statements. Print out a message hello world, add 1 to count, close curly bracket. The last loop in our example is called a for loop. Again, the for loop executes a predetermined number of times. Let's look at the syntax here. We don't need to have a control variable such as count because we use a control variable inside the syntax for the for loop. On line 34, it says for, open parentheses. The first part is an initialization, int I equals 0. I is a variable name and can be changed to anything. Semicolon. As long as I less than 3. The middle part is our condition, similar to the count less than 3 in the while loop and the do-while loop. Back to the for loop. After I less than 3, semicolon, we have I plus plus. That means add 1 to I each time through the loop until I is no longer greater than 3, then exit. We print out the words hello world. If I run this program, we'll see the results of the do-while print out hello world 3 times, the same as the while loop and the same as the for loop. I will mention that all for loops and do-while loops can be rewritten as a while loop. You might be thinking, when would I ever use a do-while loop? An example of a program that can make use of a do-while loop is a program that provides the user with a list of menu items. The program needs to present the list to the user at least once. An example of a while loop, this loop is used while a condition is true. If we took out a simple loan of $5,000, how many months would it take to pay it back if we pay $500 per month? Think about that. What would be the loop condition? It has to be something that changes every time through the loop and eventually allows the loop to end. In this case, it would be when the loan is totally paid back or the balance is equal to 0. All loops use Boolean expressions to control their loop. When working with loops, it's important to carefully set up the condition of the loop. For example, if we accidentally changed the condition to cause the loop to continue while the balance was less than 0, in our example above, it would never execute the code. When deciding on the loop condition, a simple mistake can cause an infinite loop. This causes the program to continually run inside the loop. By putting a semicolon after a while loop condition statement is one way to cause an infinite loop. In our example, We would have an infinite loop if we forgot to update the balance inside the loop or if we added the monthly payment instead of subtracting it so the balance kept going up. The last type of loop is the for loop and should be used when you know how many times to execute a block of code. The for loop syntax is much different than the while and the do-while loop. It has 3 parts: initialization, test condition, and update. There are several common problems that can be solved using loops, such as finding the sum and average of a series of numbers, counting the number of matches, finding the first match in a list of items, finding the max and min values in a series of values, comparing adjacent values, simulations. Most of the programs included from this point forward include loops, so you will see lots of examples.